Today on Go Ahead Ask, what is California Proposition 19? How will it affect parents and grandparents' ability to transfer real estate to kids and grandkids? And what are some of the other issues that we should be aware of? Let's unravel that today on Go Ahead Ask.
Building wealth in real estate? Let the Exeter Group take the mystery out of how it's done on Go Ahead Ask.
Welcome to Go Ahead Ask podcast by the Exeter Group, where we unravel the mystery of investment real estate. Our objective is to provide investors with quality information so they can make better informed investment decisions. I'm Bill Exeter, your host today. I'm President and Chief Executive Officer of Exeter 1031 Exchange Services. The Exeter Group of companies includes Exeter 1031 Exchange Services, which is a qualified intermediary for 1031 exchange transactions. It also includes Exeter Trust Company, which serves as IRA custodian for self-directed IRAs, trustee of title holding trust, and escrow agent for specialty holding escrows. We encourage questions on Go Ahead Ask, so please send your questions or topics to ask@exeterco.com or call us at area code 619-239-3091. And if you love Go Ahead Ask, like it, subscribe to it, share it, and please comment on it. We do track the comments and we'll respond to that. Today's podcast is Unraveling the Mystery of California Proposition 19. Many of you have likely heard about California Proposition 19 and are worried about the effect it will have on passing property to children and grandchildren. Many of you are looking for solutions and answers. We're going to go ahead and unravel that mystery today. And we have two really special guests today and friends as well on Go Ahead Ask. Our first is Tony Krvaric. Tony is President and Chief Executive Officer of Krvaric Capital and Risk Management. And second is Jordan Marks, Esquire, Taxpayer Advocate with the San Diego County Assessor, Recorder, and County Clerk Office. And Tony, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was born and raised in Sweden. I came here. I was inspired by Ronald Reagan to move to America. And I was surprised to find out that when I came here, not everybody lives at like South Fork, because that was our image of the United States and J.R. Ewing and that whole thing. So anyway, that was a diet that I was fed steadily in the 80s. Came here in the 90s, lived here now for the majority of my life. I have a wife and 4 children. We live in Scripps Ranch. I'm a financial advisor. And so that means we help select individuals and families make smart choices with their money, and often that includes real estate. So I'm here to help buttress any information needed as we talk about real estate and learn about Prop 19.
And Jordan, how about a little bit about yourself?
So a licensed attorney here in California. I work for your elected assessor, recorder, county clerk here in San Diego County, Ernie Dronenberg. And out of the 58 counties that we have here in the state of California, only one has an official taxpayer advocate office. And that's my job. I'm the taxpayer advocate. I'm here to help you make sure you're treated fairly, make sure you get the education you need to act proactively to best take advantage of the system and be an active participant and thrive here in San Diego County. And then also, if we have any systemic issues here at the office, I address those and we work to be the best. Customer service is our number one priority, and I'm the king of customer service.
And I can tell you, you guys do an awesome job. Just being in the business we're in, with all the clients who do recordings, et cetera, San Diego County is amazing. So let's go ahead and jump into unraveling the mystery of California Proposition 19. And Jordan, we should probably start off with kind of a little bit of a California proposition history that kind of sets the stage for our conversation on Prop 19. So maybe give us a little background on what we've had in the past from like Proposition 13 forward.
Yeah, so in the state of California, we have this really unique process, which it allows the people to actually govern themselves in a capacity called the initiative process. And if you gather enough signatures and with enough votes on the ballot, you can actually pass changes to our Constitution that will enact laws and changes. And so everything doesn't have to go through the legislature. There can be people-driven processes. So for example, in 1978, the people said, hey, we've had enough with overtaxation, and they called it the tax revolt. And a group of citizens got together and they passed what's called the property tax reform. And so in 1978, the people passed something that said, hey, from now on, when I purchase property, I'm only going to pay 1% of that purchase price in a fair and open market transaction for property taxes annually. And that amount can increase up to 2% per year, but never to exceed that cap. And that's one of the beautiful things that makes California property so affordable is our property tax system. So if fast forward to 2020 through the initiative process, there was a couple of different initiatives that came forward. The more well-known and popular one that was talked about was Proposition 15, which is the split roll one, which would have been just detrimental to the commercial property taxes and made everybody's locked in Prop 13 rates on commercial property tax evaporate and charge them at today's rate. A huge tax increase, the largest property tax increase we would have seen. That failed, came very close, but it failed. And the one that did pass, and I think it was because Prop 15 was being talked about, Prop 19 passed, and that had a very nice title attached to it, protecting wildfire victims, seniors, and disabled, and making their taxes affordable. And what it ended up doing was making some changes to the child transfer. Those are your wealth building opportunities in California property. And so we had major changes come forward there, and that passed by 1%. But you know what? 50% plus one, it's new rules and a new day, and that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Jordan, first I want to say you guys do an excellent job over at the assessors. I know you said that, but I want to say that as somebody who works with people that have investments, or even myself and friends and family that have to deal with a county assessor recorder. That's usually not something, I have to go deal with the assessor recorder clerk today. And you guys make that seamless and do a great job. So kudos to you, and kudos for our Ernie Dronenberg for doing such a great job here in San Diego. I know he's in the leadership for the state as well, for the county assessors across. They have a lot to learn from San Diego, and you're part of that. So Jordan, as you mentioned, wealth building, that's our business as well. One of the opportunities is to pass real estate from parents that pass away, to pass real estate holdings to their children. So how did Prop 19 change that? We're in a new day. There was a period of time where people could make some adjustments prior to the law going into effect, but we're now essentially, like you said, in a new day. What is the difference, a parent or parents leaving real estate to their children, or anyone else for that matter? What's the difference now versus, say, last year?
So thank you again, Tony. I appreciate that. And, the assessor, recorder, clerk, it's really three diverse jobs. We appraise all the real estate in San Diego County. We do your birth certificates, your death certificates, and we also do your marriage licenses. So if you're running to the courthouse, you've gone to the wrong spot, you got to come to the county clerk's office here at the county building. So we're here to help you with all of your needs. Now, when Prop 19 was passed, it changed what was called Prop 58, a proposition that was passed in the 70s that basically allowed a parent to pass to their children the low tax base that they had locked in. So remember Prop 13, when you purchased your property, it locked in your rate and limited the tax increase up to 2%. So for example, you could be paying taxes based on a $200,000, we're going to call it assessed value. That's the value in the top right-hand corner of your property tax bill. But the building could be worth $1 million. So at 1% on a $200,000 value, you're paying $2,000 versus on $1 million value, $10,000. So it actually created quite a substantial savings over time. And what Prop 58 said is, hey, you know what? We want to make sure that it could be affordable for you and your family and your wealth building opportunity. So Prop 58, which expired on February 16th when Prop 19 came into effect of 2021, allowed you to pass your family home, unlimited value, doesn't matter. So if you had a family home, and we saw this quite often, actually, especially in some of the areas like La Jolla and Coronado, you had a family home that at the market value was $2 million, or would be a $20,000 tax bill, but you were paying $2,000 because you locked in that Prop 13 rate. And your kids couldn't afford to keep that and pay $20,000 a year. So you passed it down to them. That was there. In addition to that, it gave you the ability to pass commercial or other property. So for example, if you're a small business restaurant and you bought your property and you locked in that low assessed value, you could give your kids up to $1 million of assessed value. So again, if you were paying on $200,000, but your property is worth $30 million, it doesn't matter. You are giving them that lower $2,000 tax bill. It's one of the ways that people were able to afford to buy property in California, build wealth, and also pass it on to the next generation. When Prop 19 came into effect, it basically said, okay, we're going to now allow you to keep the family home, but only up to $1 million of market value. Remember before we're talking assessed value, that locked in rate? Now it's based on the market and it's only $1 million. So there are some people on their primary residences that are going to see their taxes go up on their kids. And now the kids have to live in the property. So we've seen this huge shift, especially, remember that other property we just talked about, the commercial property or the second apartment that you bought while your kids were going to UCSD, an opportunity for your family to build wealth. You can no longer pass them that low assessed value. And when it transfers, it gets reassessed at market. So before, if you were paying $2,000 and your kids got to pay $2,000, now when they got that property that's worth $2 million, they're paying $20,000. And so that's a big difference. That incentive to hold real estate and that ROI that was there, and that, you know, maybe 5 or 10% difference made it affordable to have a rental that you were putting out, make that affordable. But now that rental, when it passes, it gets reassessed at market and it sees a substantial tax increase. That second home or that vacation home that you would have kept, again, had it since the 70s, you were going to Big Bear every year, and now all of a sudden you're like, you know what? It got passed when mom and dad passed, and now it goes to the next generation, but it goes to the next generation with a substantial tax increase. And so in our office, 60% of our parent to child transfers, these are the people that took advantage of this wealth building opportunity, those are going to evaporate. Those are the people that are going to see these substantial tax increases. So now when you're looking at your portfolio of rentals, of the house that you bought next door so your kids can live there, all of those items in the portfolio when the parents pass are now going to go up substantially in property taxes when they pass to the next generation.
And you mentioned something about the primary residence. I want to go back to that real quick. So, you know, today they could leave the primary residence to the kids, and the property tax basis carries over. With the new Prop 19, you mentioned both it's reassessed. They could pass $1 million in fair market value, but it's reassessed above that, and also that they have to live there. You want to elaborate a little more on that, because I think that's going to surprise people.
Yeah, I actually had a family in Bird Rock. I'm just going to give you this example. Their home, they bought it for $750,000. Okay, that's what their tax base is, or they're paying $7,500 a year. It's worth $3.5 million, or a $35,000 tax increase at market rate. Their son is off in medical school in Florida. And, you know, their son might decide to stay out there for a couple of years while he gets his medical practice, does his rotations and all that. They're going to lose that ability to benefit and pass it to their kids because he has to have it as his primary residence now. And so while he tries to hold on to this property while he finishes school, it's their only son, they're going to see what would be almost a $28,000 tax increase annually. And on a student, that's unaffordable. And in California, I know you're hearing these big numbers of a $3.5 million home, but a lot of people are property rich and cash poor. You know, they have the property that has gone up tremendously over time, but they don't necessarily have the liquid cash to pay the tax increase on that. And so while now you're thinking, okay, well then just sell the home. But these are people's homes. And so now they're going to have to start thinking strategically, how do they move their properties around? What do they do? Especially for a lot of people that want to keep their homes that they've grown up in, or, you know, their family raised them in, and they want to pass to that next generation. It's something special that a lot of people talk about in our American culture, and we want to keep that opportunity. But now, again, you have to live in the property. One of the kids have to move in. And if you're like, well, I'll give it to my niece or nephew, it's the parent to child transfer. It's not the niece or the brother to sister. It has to go to that child, and then they have to live in the property. And if they move out or they rent it, we're going to see what's going to be a clawback, and then we're going to assess it at the time that they receive the property.
And is there a timeline they have to move into that property? So if parents pass, they leave it to the kids. I mean, how long before they just lose the opportunity completely?
It's 1 year. That's a great question. So if you did it under the old Prop 58, it was 3 years, but now it's 1 year and you have to claim it as your primary residence. So, unfortunately, what we're seeing in the market is a lot of people that can't afford to stay in California. And so we're seeing that next generation having moved to North Carolina or Idaho or Texas. And so now these kids are going to have to ask themselves, are they going to want to move back within a year into their family home? Most likely we're seeing a lot of that, again, that 60%, we're going to see them liquidate that asset and now say, what can I do? Because the tax law is changing, it's no longer accessible and affordable as part of our wealth building plan.
When the children inherit it, you talked about something that used to cost maybe $2,000, now it's $20,000. So the irony is that the children may not be able to afford $20,000 a year property tax, but of course California real estate market ironically is very hot. So there are plenty of buyers out there to buy that property and pay that $20,000. I guess from the state's point of view, the state brings in more revenue that way. So you mentioned people perhaps exiting definitely investment real estate and diversifying outside of California for tax reasons or just in general. If the kids aren't going to live in the investment real estate, what are Bill, you deal with 1031 exchanges, of course. So what are the options for someone who has investment real estate with a low cost basis? What are the options for them?
Certainly from our perspective, we see a lot of clients who are selling rental, investment, or business use property in California and then 1031 exchanging out of state to avoid Proposition 19. With a 1031 exchange, of course, you're selling rental, investment, or business use property. So anytime you do a 1031, the property gets reassessed no matter where you buy. But the ability to get out of California and be able to pass that on to your kids at a future date is a huge incentive. So we're seeing certainly a lot of that. The one thing investors need to be aware of is California has this thing that's been nicknamed the California clawback. So if you sell California real estate, excuse me, and you reinvest outside of California, it's still tax deferred, but California takes the position that if you ever sell in the future, cash out and pay the tax, they want their quote unquote fair share. So as long as you keep exchanging and deferring the tax, et cetera, and you hold it till you pass and you get that step up in cost basis, California never gets paid. But if you ever cash out and sell and pay tax, California wants their fair share. Jordan, are there any other strategies you've seen out there where they can at least try to plan for the Prop 19 issue?
So one of the things that we're seeing right now is, so in exchange for this real slimming down of the parent to child benefit, I mean, like Tony said, it was a revenue generating part of the initiative. They did that to offset what they expected to be a revenue loss. And the revenue loss was on what's called the senior transfer. So in the state of California, if you're over 55, they say that that's a senior. Now, that's not my definition. Okay, I'm not saying 55 is a senior. Okay, that's the state's definition. But if they're saying if you're over 55, you qualify as a senior. And before, you got to take that low tax base to another property and what's called portability and transfer it over. So you could go and buy another place for what you sold the old place for and not have the taxes go up. Now, Prop 19 expanded this and said now you can do it 3 times. So if you're a child and you're over 55 and you receive that property and you're like, hey, I don't want to leave California, I could transfer that to another property. Again, it involves selling your family home. We understand that that's not part of the plan particularly. But once you do the senior transfer and you've had that as your primary residence upon purchase, you could then convert that into a rental and there's no clawback on that portion. So we do see an opportunity for, again, if you're over 55, you can move that around. And then again, once you become a commercial property, then you open up the opportunity to do a 1031 exchange if you want to do that. You open up the opportunity to transition the funds into the market. We see a lot of people that have taken their property from the real estate market and moved it into the capital markets because they're doing so well right now. And maybe Tony can offer some sunlight on the capital markets and that opportunity as far as transition. So that way it's not a loss of family wealth, but a transition into a different opportunity.
Thanks, Jordan. Well, that goes into, there are different, of course, people, everybody, the question always is, what do I do with my funds? If people want to remain and receive rental income, they can continue to own real estate, and they can own, of course, actual rental real estate. There's securitized real estate as well, where people can defer the capital gains and move that out of state, or they can put it into, of course, like you said, capital markets. Make sure to work with somebody that a professional, make sure that's diversified, so on. Because a lot of times we're talking about people's, this isn't small change. These are major assets of a family. For the average person, their primary real estate, or if they have a rental property, a couple of rental properties, that's usually, you mentioned cash poor, property rich. Which is why, when we increase property taxes, that money has to come from somewhere. It's not just sitting around in people's checking accounts. So the options are for people to go into other rental real estate, buy that out of state, perhaps. It's very difficult to, unless you have a relationship with somebody in North Carolina, just calling a realtor out of the blue and saying, I'm looking for rental real estate. That's certainly one option. If you have some connections there, that would help. Another option is securitized real estate, which are commonly referred to as Delaware statutory trusts that package pre-identified real estate holdings into a portfolio that people can 1031 exchange into. And then, of course, we have the capital markets, which people are mostly familiar with, but it's important to stay diversified there as well, because while markets have done well, past performance is no guarantee of future results. It's something we're always reminded of, and it's important to be properly diversified and work with a securities professional that you trust, and make sure that your family wealth continues to build, and you have something to. For a lot of people, this is also their retirement income. At some point, they'll leave that to their kids, but in the meantime, priority one is making sure the people's retirement works out, and they don't have to worry about money in retirement.
So one of the things that we're hearing a lot here at the office is a lot of people concerned about 1031 exchanges and the future of 1031 exchanges. So it's leading them to want to take action now. Maybe you could shed some sunlight on that and kind of, help people plan, because they're hearing that the estate tax is getting reduced as well coming up. And so a lot of people are looking to move things around before they lose these opportunities.
That's a good point. It's, back when it was the Biden campaign, they had been talking about a number of things, one of which was to restrict the use or the limitations on 1031 exchanges. The other was, was also eliminating the step up in cost basis. So that was also something bantered around. Now, that was before he was elected and before COVID-19 really hit us hard. So after the fact, it looks like, in talking to a number of the lobbyists we work with, and in fact, there's 16 industry trade groups that have formed a coalition to help educate Congress and educate the administration on the benefits of 1031 and what it would do, not only to the real estate industry, but the economy if 1031s went away or were limited in some capacity. And what sounds like we're not going to see any tax policy proposals or changes until probably fourth quarter, because his real focus is COVID-19. It may even be first quarter next year. We expected to maybe see something in the $1.9 trillion stimulus package that was just passed, and there was no mention of 1031 exchanges in that particular act. So it really boils down to educating Congress, educating the administration, and letting them know it's not a good idea. I've been doing this for 36 years, and it comes up almost every administration, almost every Congress proposes some type of change. And once you sit down and educate them on what the cause and effect is and the benefits, et cetera, they usually back off. So it's all about educating all the folks involved at this point to make sure they know that. So there is still a pending threat. They still are looking at reducing the ability to do a 1031 exchange and eliminate the step up in cost basis. But we just have to take it seriously. We have to hit it hard and educate them. And that also goes back to, that has stimulated a lot of 1031 exchange activity. And you combine that with the pent up demand from COVID-19, you combine that with really, really low interest rates. it's a hot real estate market. And what Tony had mentioned is exactly what clients are asking. If I sell and want to do an exchange, what the heck do I buy today? And one of the easy ways to work around that is the Delaware Statutory Trust. That makes that 45-day window much, much easier. And Tony, I don't know if you want to elaborate on kind of the other benefits of the DST from a 1031 exchange perspective, kind of the debt that's involved in the DST, and maybe using a little bit of cash left over from a transaction and items like that.
Delaware Statutory Trusts, or DSTs for short, are basically securitized real estate that still qualify for the 1031 exchange provision. So if you have appreciated property here in California, then and Jordan mentioned that with a cost basis of 200,000, and the value is, say 2 million, which is actually not that uncommon. If you've held something for 30 years and you're in the right spot, you could have. I spoke with a client in La Jolla, a $2.7 million home. They bought it for 300,000. And so they've been living in it all this time, and so now they want to turn that into a rental. But when you have a rental, when you're renting out your a property, you have to deal with the terrible T's that we talk about. When you have a rental property, you're dealing with taxes, tenants, toilets, trash, and tardies. Tardies, basically client, or when the rent check doesn't come in on time. So at some point, especially if the property is out of state, a lot of people want to diversify away from California. We have a hot real estate market here. Frankly, from an investment opportunity point of view, this is a fantastic place to live. The real estate is extremely high. So there you could make the case that selling rental real estate, investment real estate in California and going out of state is not a bad idea. And Jordan mentioned Prop 15 did not pass this time, which was the raising taxes on investment property. But I don't think Jordan or Bill thinks that this is not coming back. That's a lot of tax for the state, and the state will always try to go for more revenue. So we see a lot of commercial properties, people wanting to move that out of state. So with a DST, you get to defer the capital gains taxes. Someone else takes care of the toilets, trash, tenants, taxes, and the tardies, and all you get is a rent check into your bank account once a month. So, and the amount can be they can be bought in chunks of $100,000. So if somebody has $1 million, they can have 2 DSTs. Each DST has properties in one or several states and several properties within that state. And of course, then there are multiple types of properties as well, whether it's self-storage, medical properties, apartment homes. So it's an opportunity to diversify out of state, to diversify across states and across investment type properties. So this is good for somebody who's looking for more of a hands-off approach and something that's ready to go. Bill, as you mentioned, there are certain timelines that you have to follow, and it's very easy to get tripped up. So could you maybe tell us what are some of the how does this process, maybe seems easy on a piece of paper. Oh, I have so many days to do this and I have so many days to do that. But we're dealing with the real estate, not just clicking a box online to buy or sell a stock. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what those pitfalls are and what the timelines are.
Sure. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge in today's market is when you sell rental, investment, or business use property, the day it closes triggers your 45-day window to identify what you're going to acquire. 45 days moves very quickly in any normal market. When you have a fast-paced market like this, where you're hearing about multiple offers and bidding wars, it makes it phenomenally more difficult. And that's actually where the DST can help quite a bit, because you can identify and often close during that 45-day window. But that 45 days is the challenge when you're doing a 1031 exchange, especially in markets like this. And then after that, you have an additional 135 days to actually close on the purchases you've identified, for a total of 180 days. So that's the tough part. That's the stressful part of the 1031, is that 45-day window. And as we're talking too, we're talking about seniors, et cetera, and self-employed. And in some cases, when they're selling and doing a 1031 exchange, whether you're retired, have no earned income, or you're self-employed, or other factors where you can't qualify for financing, I think that's one of the big benefits too from a Delaware statutory trust is you don't have to qualify for the financing. As you mentioned, it's already built in, and you just kind of assume it based on what percentage you buy. If you buy a 1% interest, you get 1% of the debt, and you don't have to go through the underwriting requirements.
And it doesn't go on your net worth as a debt, and all the liability. That's another, all the liability, everything rests in the DST. So you're not personally liable for any of those things. And another thing, we're talking about leaving things to heirs. That I've found with the Delaware statutory trusts, you own a piece of a larger portfolio. You have the diversification. You don't have to deal with the daily management and so forth. But often overlooked piece is that, let's say you have 2 children and you have a rental property or a commercial property somewhere, and it's doing well. Number one, if you pass, does your spouse want to deal with that? That's number one. Maybe you like real estate and you've been, but at some point, the spouse is going to, and statistics show that women will be at some point the main household, because men die sooner. They'll be in charge of the finances. And is that something that the surviving spouse is comfortable doing? But even upon the passing of the surviving spouse, if you have 2 children, how the 2 of them are now partners in owning this commercial property, and so that brings up a lot of questions. Do they get along, for starters? Does one of them want to sell it and the other one doesn't want to sell it? It takes 2 to tango. So all of a sudden, or should we raise rents or not raise rents? Now the 2 siblings are in partnership with each other, and people might say, well, my kids get along, they're all great. Well, it's, why introduce a risk moment? So with the Delaware statutory trusts, upon the final passing of the owner, each child, that then gets split, let's say it's 50-50. The Delaware statutory trust gets split 50-50, and each child owns their share. They can do with their share as they see fit. And Delaware statutory trusts do come liquid every so often. You do lose control of when it goes liquid. But it goes liquid with some regularity. So each child can own their respective share and do what they want when it becomes liquid. So it's also good for estate planning and dividing assets purposes. It's a lot easier than, just imagine your kids, or maybe you have multiple kids, all being partners in a commercial venture. So something to think about.
And Bill, this is what we really found happened with Prop 19 is that while it's not something that may impact, that tax increase won't happen until your parents pass, we did find that these conversations were getting spurred. And so I think that the valuable information that you're sharing is tremendous, but also I think it's, what we saw was really complex conversations, not just from a financial perspective, but also just from a family dynamics perspective. I mean, you try to get in the car on Sunday with the family and say, hey, where do you want to go for dinner? And if everybody says the same place, God bless you and your family. But I know my wife says where she wants to go, and then we get there and that wasn't really what she wanted sometimes. So I have to try to guess at what the right place is. And that's really kind of, imagine now you're dealing with your finances and asking your kids, do you want to take over the rental? Well, I don't know. Some of them are still developing in their own lives and they haven't really figured out what to want. And we saw this happening. And it was happening so fast that it really caught a lot of families off guard. And the law is in effect now, but now families should really be having those long-term conversations and saying, do we want a 1031 exchange? We know we have that tool available now. Do we want to wait until mom and dad pass and they get that step up in basis and then go into the capital markets? But a lot of families where their kids are now out of state, they definitely coming to the one conclusion, which a lot of them are not trying to hold on to the real estate because that financial incentive of low property taxes has evaporated on, again, 60% of the deals that we used to process. Thousands of families annually are going to be finding themselves with this huge tax increase and last minute making these decisions versus I think what you're doing is helping folks plan in advance. And so we had those folks in our office sitting here trying to make those decisions on the fly. And it was really tough to watch these families go through that. We hope that more people take advantage of this thoughtful planning process.
And we're going to take a quick commercial break for a message from our sponsor, Exeter Trust Company. This episode is sponsored by our sister company, Exeter Trust Company. Did you know that all individual retirement accounts are self-directed IRAs? It's because you choose where to put them. You choose whether to put your self-directed IRA at a bank or at a securities or brokerage firm or a life insurance company. So that makes it self-directed. But did you also know that all IRA custodians are not created equal? Most IRA custodians, like the banks, the securities firms, and the life insurance companies, limit you to publicly traded investments such as stocks and bonds and mutual funds. But some IRA custodians, like Exeter Trust Company, allow investors to invest their IRA funds in other alternative assets such as real estate. Investors can acquire real estate, mortgages, deeds of trust, or tax lien certificates inside the IRA as an investment inside the IRA. To learn more, call Exeter Trust Company at area code 307-222-8750 or visit them on the internet at exetertrustcompany.net. Now let's go back to the California Proposition 19 conversation. And, we've been talking about seniors and families, and obviously there's a lot of issues here that have to be dealt with and a lot of planning issues like you both mentioned. How does that affect the Central California area where we've got so much farmland out there? There must be specific issues to farming.
So when the initiative was being put together, the California Farm Bureau got into the process and they were able to negotiate a benefit for their members. Now, even as we're here in March, which, I mentioned the initiative passed in November, certified in December, the legislature really hasn't gotten together and passed the rules governing the Prop 19 implementation. There's been very little done. And so we're really waiting to see some of the rules implemented. But what we do know is that, again, remember you had $1 million of assessed value on other property. They did leave a benefit for the family farmers, but it's $1 million of market value. Again, that's market value versus assessed. So in an assessed value, you could have a value of $200,000 worth $200 million, but now it's $1 million of market value. And so while there is a small incentive for the family farmers, we do think that they are going to be seeing increases. And remember, $1 million in market value is a $10,000 savings annually. What we're trying to see in the rules now is it apply to each parcel? Can you have 10 lots that you pass down at $1 million each, or is it an aggregated 1 million? Those are the rules that we're waiting to see, but it's up in the air.
And you mentioned that there was a lot of last minute planning up until midnight, probably of February 15th. Tony, what do you think the first step is for families today in having these conversations and beginning the thought process on what they want to do to plan for Proposition 19?
Well, thanks, Bill. And by the way, thanks for putting this together. Great info, and that people can consume at their own leisure. But ultimately, one of the things that I found is when we meet with people to just put together a net worth statement. When we put that together and put everything in one piece, remember, people have lived or had investment real estate for decades, 30, 40, maybe 50 years. And so when and people don't think of themselves as wealthy or so on. Most of them are living middle class lives. But when you tally it all up and we create a net worth statement just to get a financial picture of, okay, what are all the assets? And then you put in who are all the players, the children, and where do the children live? That gives us an incredible canvas then to start thinking about, okay, where does this go? And is this generating income? And how do the kids get along? So one of the first things that we do is to create a net worth statement, put all the pieces on paper, if you will, and then include all the children or grandchildren. And so what seems as, well, we're not that wealthy and our lives are pretty simple. It's in reality, as Jordan said, even just going out to dinner and getting 4 people to agree, where are we going? And of course, with this, we're dealing with things that are much more higher dollar value, higher consequences of getting them wrong. So I would encourage everybody to create a net worth statement. We do ours not just line numbers, we do ours visual. So it's almost like pieces you can move around and start thinking about these things. And the values, frankly, as much as we love California here, the values are elevated. It's hard to argue with that. So from an investment point of view, not only could people potentially have better opportunities outside of the state, but also get out of the clutches in some ways of California, and they get better returns, more diversification, and more peace of mind for themselves while they're alive, and certainly for their children once they are gone. So planning is key. Make sure to talk to a professional that puts for starters, all your assets and the key players on one sheet of paper and go from there. That's what I would suggest.
Well, interestingly enough, what I was going to say is we're actually in our own personal office with government employees and pensioners. A lot of them are buying property in other states and looking to exit because their retirement goes further, pension goes further. So they're looking to move their properties and potentially 1031 exchange, give up that primary residence benefit and move it to another state, especially for that tax. So we're seeing a lot of people that are looking to extend their retirement, extend their pension, extend their opportunity for a better lifestyle. And so I wish it wasn't so. I love a lot of these folks and they're great neighbors, but we are seeing that conversation here at our office quite a bit.
You brought up a good point, is the primary residence too, and it triggered a thought. And I'm going to use a specific family as an example. So they had bought a primary residence in La Jolla, California, and they lived in it for 42 years as their primary residence. And they were having health issues, wanted to move back east with their kids and grandkids and what have you. The problem is their capital gain after 42 years was $8 million. So if they had sold, they would have gotten $500,000 tax-free as a primary residence, but they would have gotten killed on the rest of that. That's the capital gain tax, not property tax. So capital gain tax there. But there's actually an IRS ruling that kind of works with all of this. So they could, in their case, move out of the property, convert it to investment property. So they did. They moved out, moved back east with their kids and grandkids, converted it to investment property, and then later sold that. And as soon as you move out, you got a 3-year window. And as long as you, during that 3 years, can hold it long enough to show intent for investment and then sell it, you get both. You get the $500,000 tax-free exclusion, and you can do a 1031 exchange and defer the rest. So they got $500,000 tax-free, $7.5 million tax deferred through a 1031 exchange. So that's some great planning that kind of works with all of the concepts we've kind of been talking about today.
That's a great example, and a lot of people. So with a little bit of planning, as soon as you get and 500,000 exemption, again, it sounds like a lot, but if you've lived in it for almost anything in California for the last 10 years, you're bumping up against that, let alone over several decades. And that was an extreme example, if you will, but certainly once you get past that 500,000, the incentives to do a little bit of planning, and it wasn't that, it just required some forethought. It wasn't some big, complicated offshore one thing or another. As you mentioned, just convert it to a rental, make sure to document, and then the opportunities to defer. Jordan?
Well, I know that our office gets calls all the time from Bill and his team asking, hey, how do we make this work? Because I'm your local property tax guy. We do state property taxes in the state of California. And so you have to make sure that when you're moving property around, it's done in concert with federal tax laws. And so having the right folks, we always recommend work with your CPA, work with your exchange professionals, but we make sure that they know the rules so that they can operate like chess players instead of that checkers game that people lose money on. And so I think that $8 million saving is that's a chessboard move. And I know Bill always calls me for his chessboard moves, and we're here to provide him the local rules so that way he knows that his clients are safe and protected from tremendous tax increases.
That's the key, because you don't know what you don't know. And that's why it's so critical for the client to go to Tony and, start that planning process, talk to your tax advisor, and make sure you know exactly what your taxable event's going to be as well. And so I know we're butting up against a hard stop here. So why don't we have each of you give out your contact information in case the listeners want to reach out. And Tony, why don't you go first?
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for putting this on. Our contact information is krvariccapital.com, KRVARIC capital.com, or 858-451-9700, 858-451-9700. What I would suggest is that you can give us a call with any questions. If we're able to assist, great. If we're not, then we can send you the right way. So it doesn't hurt to pick up the phone and call, or go to krvariccapital.com, send us a message over there. We're happy to chat with you. And as I said, if we don't have the answer, we can most likely let you know where to find the right answer.
Super. Jordan, you're next.
You can always reach us at sdarcc.com. That's the San Diego County Assessor, Recorder, County Clerk, sdarcc.com. Or I give you my cell phone number. I do say I just had a toddler, and my wife's a divorce attorney. And so during the thick of the Prop 19, I was getting phone calls at 4, 5, 6 a.m. and 9, 10, 11 p.m. People operate at different hours. My toddler's up until 7 p.m. and after 8 a.m. But don't worry, I'm here to help you. My wife did say if you answer those phone calls after that time, you'll learn what I do for a living. And I don't want to, because she's a very good divorce. But my cell phone is 619-372-0226. Or the best way to reach me and send me your information, we're going to get you what you need, is Jordan, JORDAN.Marks, MARKS, at sdcounty.ca.gov. It's long, but it's free, and I'm here as a resource for you. I appreciate your tax dollars that help me be here as a resource for you.
Perfect. Tony, Jordan, thank you so much for being on today. This has been a lot of really, really good information. Hopefully it'll be helpful in taxpayers planning for their next chess move. Thank you for listening to Go Ahead Ask podcast. Remember, we always encourage questions. So send your questions, send your topics to ask@exeterco.com, or call us at 619-239-3091. If you like our podcast, like it, subscribe to it, share it, and comment on it. You're always welcome to ask questions in the comment section. We will always respond. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Go Ahead Ask with the Exeter Group. Join us for our next episode when we further unravel the mysteries of real estate.